Hello and welcome to Shorts in Psychology. In today's video, we're going to be discussing focus groups. What are they? How do they work? And what are some of their advantages and disadvantages? Let's have a look. The focus group method is widely used in a variety of areas, including market research, political analysis, and psychology. It is a group interview technique consisting of 6 to 12 people that obtains data through discussion between research participants, also often called respondents, in a group setting. Focus group discussion is frequently used as a qualitative approach to gain an in-depth understanding of people's attitudes and opinions on a particular topic. The method aims to obtain data from a purposely selected group of individuals rather than from a statistically representative sample of a broader population. So how does a focus group work? To begin with, the topic and goals of the focus group need to be determined. Participants are then recruited based on certain characteristics or demographic information such as age and race. Focus groups typically last between 90 minutes to 2 hours and are led by a trained facilitator who will try to stimulate discussion using open-ended questions. Their role is to encourage participants to discuss issues of importance to them in relation to the research topic, without saying too much about what they, the facilitator, wants to hear. During the sessions, researchers may observe the group from behind one-way mirrors, and the audio and/or video recordings are usually taken. A note taker may also be present. At the conclusion of the focus group, qualitative data in the form of audio, video, and written notes collected during the session is analysed and summarised using content analysis. Let's now examine the role of the facilitator in a bit more detail. Facilitators usually work from a guide with an outlined discussion plan. As well as generating questions for discussion with the rest of the group, it is important that leading questions are avoided so as to not influence the participants. The facilitator must remain neutral in the discussion. It is their role to keep participants focused on the topic, involve all the participants, and encourage group members to react to each other's comments. Indeed, the quality of a focus group's outcomes depends on the discussion. This is in part achieved by establishing a clear set of objectives prior to conducting the focus group. Participants must also be comfortable enough to interact openly. Just as in the dynamics of real life, the participants are able to interact, influence, and be influenced. Furthermore, the line of questioning used by the facilitator needs to follow a logical sequence intended to mimic a natural exchange. This includes avoiding abrupt changes of direction or topic so that focus group members can interpret the context for the discussion. Finally, the ability of the facilitator to keep the group on task and ensure that all participants have input and contribute as equally as possible is crucial. One or more individuals dominating the discussion must be prevented. Focus groups have some distinct advantages over other qualitative methods. These include the fact that information is provided more quickly than if people were interviewed separately. The researcher can also get information from nonverbal responses such as facial expressions and body language. Another advantage is that the researcher can interact with the participants, pose follow-up questions, or ask questions that probe more deeply. The participants themselves can also use the ideas of others as cues to express their own views. This can also enable a greater pool of expertise to be tapped into than in an individual interview. Thus, the in-depth data that is gathered can be used to explore topics and generate hypotheses for future investigations. Focus groups are also a good way to obtain information from illiterate communities. However, focus groups also do present a variety of challenges. These include the fact that it is not based on a natural atmosphere, which can distract or intimidate the participants. Compared to individual interviews, focus groups are not as efficient in covering maximum depth on a particular issue. A particular disadvantage is that participants may not express their honest and personal opinions about the topic. They may be hesitant to express their thoughts, especially when their thoughts oppose the views of another participant, and feel peer pressure to give similar answers to the facilitator's questions. Furthermore, despite the facilitator's best efforts, a few individuals may dominate the discussion, thus obtaining individual opinions rather than those of the group. In the data analysis stage, it can also be difficult to distinguish between these two types of opinions. The success of a group discussion can be unpredictable depending on the atmosphere, skills of the facilitator, and willingness of the participants to engage in dialogue. Group discussions can also be difficult to steer and control, so time can be lost to irrelevant topics. As we've already discussed, the facilitator can greatly impact the outcome of a focus group discussion. They may intentionally or inadvertently inject their personal biases into the participants' exchange of ideas. This can affect responses and skew results. Facilitators can also lead focus group participants into reaching certain assumptions or conclusions. Even simply their presence, plus that of any other observers or note takers, can influence the behaviour of the participants. Lastly, the small sample size means the groups may not be a good representation of the larger population, preventing results from being able to be generalised. Let's conclude by looking at a past exam question. Pause the video while you attempt this question. In Part A, you simply need to demonstrate your knowledge and understanding of how focus groups work. The question is worth 4 marks, so you need 2 connected, well-described ideas. This includes points including that it is an informal interview of a small group of people and uses a series of questionnaires on one or more topics that the group discusses. The discussion is led by a facilitator who asks the questions and an observer or recorder who will be present to take notes or record responses. You could also elaborate more on the role of the facilitator in your answer. Part B asks you to identify one limitation of applying knowledge. The phrase applying knowledge is referring to generalizability and validity, so your limitations should relate to these. There are a range of such limitations that you could discuss. This includes the fact that it may not represent the whole population, as the sample is small and thus lacks generalizability and validity. The data can also be biased due to the demographic characteristics of the group. Dominant talkers may have skewed the results. Or lastly, group thinking and peer pressure may lead to participants conforming to the ideas of the group or giving socially desirable responses, telling the facilitator what they think they want to hear. I hope this video has helped you to understand the focus group method and some of its advantages and disadvantages. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time for another Shorts in Psychology.